Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today we have actually a cool video to do today. The USFL on, I believe, Thursday actually announced the All-USFL team for the 2022 season. This is a big deal. For one, it does mark the success of this season as it actually went through, and two, well, awards in a sense. Now, they haven't done the actual awards yet, but this is the All-USFL team. This is kind of like the All-Pro, but I'm only saying kinda because, well, it pretty much is. They announced this after week 9 before week 10, so kind of weird about that, but suffice to say, congratulations to all the players who made it, but there are a couple that I think the voters were wrong about, which I'll get to those later on in the video, but without further ado, let's get started with the All-USFL 2022 offense. The quarterback is Kyle Slaughter of the New Orleans Breakers. The running back is Darius Victor of the Generals. The other running back is Reggie Corbin of the Panthers. Wide receiver Victor Bolin Jr. of the Stallions. Wide receiver Cavante Turpin of the Generals. Tight end Sal Cannella for the Breakers. Terry Poole for the Generals. Cameron Hunt for the Stallions. Jared Thomas for the Breakers. Garrett McGinn for the Generals. And Gerard Jones for the Bandits. Those last 5 are all the offensive linemen that ended up making the team. Overall, the offense was pretty solid. A couple of them, but I'll get to those later. But overall, congrats to those guys who made it. The All-USFL defense. The defense was definitely one where there were a couple guys that were pretty much gimmies, including defensive end for the Gamblers, Chris Odom. Then the other guys included Reggie Howard Jr., defensive tackle of the Breakers, Toby Johnson, defensive tackle of the Generals, Davin Bellamy of the Breakers, defensive end, and then the 3 linebackers were DeMarcus Gates of the Stallions, Donald Payne of the Gamblers, and Gerard Fernandez for the Breakers. The 2 cornerbacks were Channing Stribling of the Stars and Will Likely for the Gamblers. The safeties were Bryce Tornadin for the Maulers and Shalom Luani for the Generals. And then last but not least are the All-USFL special teams. Special teams, they ended up doing an overall special teamer, a kick returner, punt returner, kicker, and punter. So the kicker went to Brandon Aubrey of the Stallions. Punter was Brandon Wright of the Bandits. Special teamer was Victor Bolden Jr., again, of the Stallions. Then there was kick returner Maurice Alexander for the Stars. And then Cavante Turpin, again, for a punt returner on the Generals. Overall, most of these players were pretty solid. And to me, the special teams is actually perfect. I think they did a pretty good job overall on special teams. I think all 5 were right. But there were a couple issues on some of the other ones, which I'll get into now. So the main issue I have, and pretty much the biggest issue I have, is actually Michigan's Lance Lenoir Jr. not making the team. He should have made it for the offense as one of the wide receivers, mainly over Victor Bolin Jr. Cavante Turpin, without a doubt, deserved it. The fact that he's on a rush-heavy team and he ended up leading the league in receiving yards through the first 9 weeks is insane. But Lance Lenoir Jr. and pretty much just everything should be above Victor Bolin Jr. So the only thing Victor really has better is his yards after catch is the main, the big thing about it. And because the thing is, both of them only have 1 touchdown receiving wise, but one of them is on a team that was pretty much undefeated the whole year, and through mainly, I'd say the first probably 7 weeks, was with the viewed best quarterback in J'Mar Smith, whereas Lance Lenoir Jr. has been having to play with Shea Patterson, who got cut, Paxton Lynch, who's been hurt and only ended up playing a good quarter or 1 decent game, Josh Love, and then I believe Bieri as his quarterbacks. He's had pretty much no legit quarterback consistency, yet he ended up being above almost everyone in yards. Now, it also is because he has a lot of targets, you might say, but so does Victor Bolin Jr. So, the fact is, in most stats, Lance Lenoir does seem to have enough of an edge to deserve being higher. Both of them have 0 drops, but it's hard, well, pretty much no one does, but it's pretty much hard for me to look at it and saying that Victor Bolin deserves it. Especially when his own teammate, as you can see also on here, is even better than him. Marlon Williams is also a receiver. He also played in 8 games, and he had less targets, yet he still had more receiving yards. And not only that, but he has more receiving touchdowns. So Victor Bolin Jr., I feel like this is one of those where because he leads the league in total yards for most of the season, which, as mentioned, is total yards, and he does return a lot, I think that this was the biggest egregious one. Lance Lenoir Jr. definitely should have been on the receivers over Victor Bolin Jr. I just honestly can't look at that and think that's correct. The rest of the offense, I think, was solid, though. I do agree with pretty much everyone else that was on the offense, but that was the one big problem on the offense for me. As for the defense, I think overall the defense was also pretty solid, but just like the offense, there was one guy that I think was definitely robbed, and that was Adam Rodriguez, defensive end of the Stars. Overall, the guy I would take off is David Bellamy, which I know to some people is pretty insane because some people who are Breakers fans want to say he's DPOY, but the bottom line is, look at the stats. Yes, I mean, let's just think about it this way. The Breakers they're both pretty much the same record. Both their teams are pretty, you know what I mean. Overall, Rodriguez ended up having 4 less total tackles with 1 less solo. So tackle-wise is not that big a deal. Sack-wise, however, he is second in the league with 8 sacks versus David Bellamy's 5.5. That is a 2.5 sack difference. So, in that regard, Rodriguez definitely hasn't beaten the sack regard. Forced fumbles caused, he's caused 2. Bellamy's only caused 1. Pass defended, they both defended 1. But also, Adam Rodriguez also caused a safety, which overall, I'm just saying that's definitely better than Bellamy. I know he missed a game, but even if you were to take his average, the only stat that would really increase that much is his tackling stat, which even then wouldn't go up that insane. So to me, the fact that Rodriguez got snubbed for him, I feel like it's just because he is a breaker, and I'm being honest, I think that's the only reason is because he's a breaker. So overall, I really don't agree with that one. I think that's the one on defense that I am totally upset about. Toby Johnson, I think, is questionable, but defensive tackle-wise, there weren't that many insane defensive tackles. But David Bellamy being on there instead of Adam Rodriguez is pretty insane to me. I believe Adam Rodriguez and Channing Stribling help make that Stars team function. As I said before, it's them, Matt Colburn, and Case Cookus that can make that team's nucleus form. And I think that without a doubt, he deserved to be on here over Bellamy. Bellamy's only here because I think he's a breaker, and I'm being honest. Because in almost every stat, Rodriguez trumps him, and he trumps him by a decent margin. So overall, that's my take on this. I think overall, though, the fact that you only have 2 players that I can genuinely say got totally robbed, and that's it, is a very good way to indicate that, yeah, you made a good choice. To be fair, the cornerbacks were really easy. I mean, it's obviously Will Likely and Channing Stribling. Chris Odom is a lock. The linebackers are all insanely solid and have to be there. Brandon Aubrey may have fallen off a bit, but overall he's still been the most consistent kicker in the league. Brandon Wright's been nominated for Player of the Week 85 times at this point, despite only being 9 weeks. The running backs are pretty solid. I mean, Reggie Corbin has the stats he has, despite missing multiple weeks. So overall, I think they did a solid job. This has been ZomFox. If you enjoy this content, want to be notified as soon as I upload any videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. And as always, have a great night.